everyone. Thank you for having me today. I'll be sharing on marketing with a mission, how you can really use your RD skills to have an impact in the business world. Next slide. So just to introduce myself, I'm Jocelyn. I'm a registered dietitian. I lead our partnerships here at FODzyme, where we make a digestive enzyme for those with FODMAP intolerances. Next slide. A brief overview of just what I want to share with you today. So I want to give you a little background into my career path and how I landed in the role that I'm in right now. I want to walk you through the life of an RD marketer, just a typical day and some of the projects that I work on. I want to share some of the advice that has really helped me land the roles that I've had and give you some tips if this is something that you're interested in pursuing. And then, of course, have plenty of time for Q&A. So I started my career, as an undergrad, was studying political science at Duke, had no idea that I wanted to be working in nutrition. I went out of school and ended up in management consulting and some marketing kind of projects, and then went in-house marketing at some healthy food companies. But throughout that process, kind of realized that I wanted to be more well-versed in the nutrition science as well. And so I went back to grad school, got my master's in clinical nutrition, went to NYU, and then did the Bronx VA dietetic internship. And from there, I worked in doing some a little nutrition consulting at smaller brands, and then started working as a consultant at Dr. Shar, which makes gluten-free bread for those with celiac and IBS. And that's where I really realized that I wanted to specialize in gastroenterology and nutrition there. And so, the next role that I went to was the current one that I'm in, our head of partnerships here at FODzyme, which I've been in for about a year and a half now, almost 2 years. I do a little bit of everything. We're a small company, so I really have the luxury of getting to have my hand in a lot of different nutrition areas. So a large portion of what I end up working on is really building our healthcare provider community. So that's a lot of registered dietitians, as well as gastroenterologists and even primary care providers. And so I do our CEU webinar programming. We offer, quarterly free CEUs to dietitians. They're available on demand. We do them live as well. So those are all just on our website. We have a lot of, onboarding calls for dietitians. I conduct all of those. So just one-on-one product education, helping them understand the best kind of patients that we can help. I do also a lot of the customer kind of education and really developing insights into how our customers are doing with our digestive enzyme product. FODMAPs are complicated. It takes a lot of nuance to really get to the success that you can have with a product like ours. So this is, website content, it's emails, it's doing a lot of resources. So, building out handouts, recipes, blogs, so many different formats of kind of being able to distill a lot of complex nutrition science into a way that's digestible for our community, both those providers and the dietitians themselves. In the same way, when you're counseling, there will be some patients that really, it clicks best with a hands-on cooking demo, whereas others want a handout to, pin to their fridge. We try to deliver our content across a broad spectrum of formats as well, because there's so many different learning styles. And then another piece of the work that I do is our clinical research. So a lot of this is supporting our clinical research pipeline to really drill down into the best ways that we can be providing support to patients by understanding, the best success rates with different categories of patients, administration, all of that. And so we're presenting at FENCI this year. We're presenting at another gastroenterology conference. So that's a really exciting piece of work that I do, and all of the work that we do at conferences themselves, just across different specialties. And then I also, have a role as helping our company stay up to date in the ever-changing and really robust and exciting field of, gastroenterology and nutrition research in general, to be able to, weigh in on what are the best practice recommendations across, IBS and other GI conditions. So I really want to emphasize that there's such an overlap between being an RD and a marketer. There's some, specific skills that might be more, within one wheelhouse or the other, but there's really a lot of overlap between the two. So as an RD, you're really well versed in the nutrition science. You can, share on the best recommendations for nutrition itself and really interpret research very well. As a marketer, there's a lot of design and brand voice that you would have some experience in. You'd also play a little bit more of a role in, campaign analytics and some of the more kind of executional aspects of marketing. But the overlap is huge. So, when it comes to understanding how customers are doing with a product, for something like our product, it's basically the same as understanding how your patient is doing. So there's a lot of work to be able to understand the care process and what's happening for them, and then be able to distill it into, nutrition communications, whether that's an email or a resource or any other kind of format to help it really click with your audience. And then, as with many roles, there's a lot of project management. So coordinating between different departments, making sure that, projects are meeting timelines and all of the other kind of logistical skills that you certainly have as both an RD and marketer as well. And so if this is an area of interest to you, my advice, starting out would first to just think about, is there an area of nutrition that you're most excited to work in? So for me, that became, GI nutrition, but there's so many other roles that you could have at different kinds of companies, like, prenatal nutrition, maybe CKD, or even just general healthy eating. So that's a good kind of place to start as you're thinking about this as a potential career path. Once you've thought about that, also start making just a list of the companies out there that you think are doing exciting and interesting things. So do they have products and a mission that you would be excited to get behind? And just make a really long list, regardless of whether or not they seem to have a job posting or not. Then from there, start really scanning your network and look into, who do you know who's a dietitian that might be working in this field? Maybe you know someone at a company that seems to employ dietitians, but they're not related to dietitians at all. This is all relevant. Maybe even it's a past professor that seems to have kind of any connection to the food industry as well. And then on top of that, think about the skills that you might be most excited to bring to the table. Like I said, because we're a small company, I end up doing a lot of different categories of work, but you could, specialize just on product development or research pipeline or really the, customer communications piece of it. So that's another thing to just think about where you think the overlap between your skills and interests are and what a role might be looking for. When it comes down to kind of the nitty-gritty of the search and that process, here are some sites that I just wanted to share to get started looking into both jobs as well as people who might be dietitians employed at companies. So LinkedIn is, of course, great. ARC would be more on the retail dietitian side of things, but they can also have job postings. Then when it comes to, companies, on the left here are more food companies themselves. On the right would be more of an agency side. But really just start looking, not just for open jobs, but for dietitians who seem to have, a role at the company that they're doing something in a marketing kind of capacity. And these titles can be really hard to make sense of. There's truly no standardization at all to dietitians in marketing roles. I've listed here just a couple to look for as you're scanning through job descriptions, as well as, again, just people who are currently working at companies to try to reach out to and network with. They rarely just say like nutrition marketing, but once in a while you'll see that as well. And then what I pulled here, this is truly just from LinkedIn. This is an example of a job posting that at first glance, especially with this title, you might not know that they're really looking for a dietitian. But when we get a little bit more into the details of this, and if we go to the next slide, what I did was just highlight some of what they describe in the job. And so they're looking for someone who can really do scientific content creation, build, content for their registered dietitian community and spend time with dietetic associations and conferences. They're looking for someone who can really handle scientific communication and project management, like we said, and build a community of their healthcare providers. So this one happens to be a kind of gut health directed company, but this would be across any different department. So I leave this up here too, just, if you want to come back and reference it and see what kind of responsibilities and qualifications a job like this might be looking for. Don't be intimidated by the qualifications. They're always going to post them for their ideal candidate, and that person does not exist. So if it seems like something that you're interested in, always reach out to someone at the company, submit an application, and really give it a shot. On the next slide, I also want to kind of walk through the process of, maybe you've identified a job that seems exciting to you, or you just want to work from what I had on the previous slide and start building your resume so that it's kind of tailored to an RD in marketing. The most important thing is always to make sure that what you're listing as your skills are outlined in the job description. So here, maybe they're looking for nutrition education. And so you could use a sentence like this, supporting development and communication on whatever condition it was. I don't need to go through every one of these, but I really wanted to just give you tactical examples so that you can work from this and tailor it based off of, the jobs you're seeing, your personal experience, to make sure that you're building a really tailored, nuanced resume that will stand out. So please come back and reference this. I really want to help make your jobs as easy as possible when it comes to getting yourselves ready for these applications. The next thing that's also really important is just building your online profile so that you're truly putting your best foot forward. When it comes to LinkedIn, make sure that you've got a really professional looking profile photo, that you've filled out all of the different aspects of the job and, your profile itself that you can. So something like your headline, your about, all those keywords and skills that you would want to, be matching to the job itself. Same goes for email. Make sure your email itself is professional, not something you used in high school. I know it's almost so basic to say stuff like this, but I've seen anything and everything in the reach out. So you really just want to, make sure that you're looking professional when you are reaching out. And then when it comes to networking, I know that it can seem kind of intimidating or sound like, when you're looking for an RD and marketing role, it really is kind of a niche position. So reaching out and, leveraging your network is so, so important. These jobs can be really hard to find, but when you're speaking to people one-on-one and just doing some cold outreach, they do exist and you are so well positioned for them. So here are my tips on what's really helped me in my past job searches. First, do your homework. So make sure that you're sending a really personalized note to, whoever you're reaching out to. Always ask them for advice, not a job. Everyone was in your shoes once and someone shared advice and tips with them. So people will be more than happy to give you their time and wisdom. But a lot of times when you're just asking for a job, it can kind of preclude the conversation and they won't even respond. You want to be respectful of everyone's time. So aim for an initial conversation to be 10 to 15 minutes and maybe even include that in your outreach note up front. Maybe later conversations, if they get to that, can be longer, but just be mindful and respectful for the first one. You always want to provide context too in your interests and where you're coming from, the advice or what you're hoping to get from that conversation to make their job easier so that you guys can have a really focused conversation. They can offer all the value that they can, and you're getting what you really want out of the conversation. This last piece, I cannot emphasize enough. So always ask for an intro as you wrap up each conversation. Make sure that it leads to the next one. Say, is there anyone else that you could introduce me to that is relevant in this field that comes to mind? Just make sure that you're constantly having these next conversations with people because they do have such great networks and you want to be able to leverage that. And then, of course, send your thank yous. And so what I, shared here is truly an example of something that I'm sure I sent years ago. Also want to put this up here just so you have a starting place when you're, starting to build these outreach notes. They don't have to be fancy, complicated, just something that's kind of personalized and short and sweet to the point. I know that it can, feel intimidating to do some cold outreach, but truly once you rip off that Band-Aid and start sending out some initial emails, it will start flowing and they really do work and can be really helpful conversations. And then I just want to, share a couple final words on what I've found is, most helpful for me. The first thing going into, thinking about a career in marketing as an RD is just think about, what you're interested in and what skills you could really bring to the table so that you're building a meaningful career out of it. I know that every day I'm helping patients, find digestive relief, and it's a really, really meaningful career for me. So think about what that looks like for you. All experience counts. So, I know starting out when you're just graduating, you're saying, oh, what do I put on a resume? But you've got so much great experience to highlight from your dietetic internship, maybe student groups on campus, maybe even your own personal social profile or blog. So don't be shy, highlight it all. It all really makes a difference. Also stay open-minded and positive. Maybe you apply to a job or, you have an initial conversation and you're not sure about the company or the role, but still have that conversation anyways. There's a lot that you can learn from it. If nothing else, it's great interview practice. And then maintain confidence. As a dietitian, you do bring a ton to the table at industry, food companies, supplement companies like I'm at. you know, no one ever really gets their first job on the first try. So hang in there. It might take a dozen, if not more, applications, and certainly a dozen, outreach notes, but maintain confidence and keep going. There are awesome roles out there. And, with that, I would love to hear any questions you guys have about my experience either at Pforzheim or prior to that.
Thank you, Jocelyn. That was so insightful, and your slides were so cute with all the food. I loved it. We actually do have a question here. Abby said, this is so insightful. Curious how your dietetic internship or volunteer work helped you pivot into nutrition marketing.
Yeah,
If
I would say my dietetic internship, because I was at the VA, it's very heavily clinical. Um, but there were always opportunities for us to be doing kind of marketing like projects. So if that's, resource development, maybe you're doing community groups. So I would, present each week to I was in kind of the move rotation, which is more bariatric. So we would have a healthy eating presentation. And that's something that I do all the time in my role, and I'm presenting to dietitians or patients. So it's a lot of skills like that. And then, there's certainly the blog and writing aspect of it. So any kind of work where you're creating content or writing is relevant experience that qualifies as marketing. And it really just comes down to what's the content itself. And because it will be nutrition related, that's nutrition marketing.
Yeah, fantastic. I feel like I remember doing like food service, like using Canva and stuff during food service rotation. So there's so many things that people probably don't think about that can get you that experience during your internship and seeking out those volunteer opportunities too. So thank you. And if you are able to answer, there actually is a specific question about FODMAP, if you're able to just jump in the chat there after. But thank you so much for sharing your unique role as a marketing dietitian in the industry. Really appreciate.
Of course. Thank you, everyone. And if you want to reach out at fodzime.com/partners, you can, get in touch, sign up for our emails, and you'll have my